It was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway, a chance to escape the grind of college life and reconnect with nature. But as I sit here, huddled in the backseat of Tom's old, beat-up sedan, I can't shake the feeling that we've made a terrible mistake. The plan was to drive through the dense woods of Oregon to a secluded cabin Tom had rented. We left campus around noon, the car packed with snacks, drinks, and a sense of adventure. By the time the sun began to set, we were deep in the forest, the tall trees casting long shadows across the narrow road. That's when the car died. "Come on, Tom, what's going on?" I asked, my voice barely concealing my anxiety. "I don't know, Jess," Tom replied, his frustration evident as he turned the key in the ignition again and again. "It just stopped." We were in the middle of nowhere, no cell signal, and the nearest town miles behind us. The forest seemed to close in around us as darkness fell, the fog thickening with every passing minute. We decided to stay put for the night, hoping the car might magically fix itself by morning. "Let's just stay calm," Sarah, our voice of reason, suggested. "We have food and water. We'll figure this out." As the hours passed, the forest around us grew eerily silent. The usual sounds of nocturnal creatures were absent, replaced by an oppressive, almost tangible silence. I glanced out the window, the fog twisting into unsettling shapes. That's when the radio crackled to life. "This is an emergency broadcast," a distorted voice announced. "Dangerous entities have been reported in the area. Stay inside, avoid the woods, and do not." The broadcast cut off abruptly, replaced by static. We all stared at the radio, the warning echoing in our minds. Dangerous entities. What did that even mean? "We should just stay in the car," Mark said, his usual bravado. "Nowhere to be found. It's probably just a prank." Suddenly, the windows fogged up and strange symbols began to appear, as if traced by an invisible hand. They were intricate and ancient-looking, nothing any of us recognized. Panic set in as we realized something was out there, something that was aware of us. "Did anyone else see that?" I whispered, my breath visible in the cold air. "Yeah," Tom replied, his voice trembling. "We need to stay calm." But calm was a fleeting concept. The fog outside grew thicker, and we heard faint whispers carried by the wind. Shadows moved just beyond the car, too quick to identify. I pressed my back against the seat, my heart pounding. "Maybe we should try to walk back to the main road," Sarah suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. "And go out there," Mark shot back. "With wipers out there, no way." Just as we were arguing, the car began to shake. At first, it was subtle, but it quickly grew violent, as if something or many things were pushing against it from all sides. The whispers grew louder, turning into a cacophony of malevolent voices. "Hold on," Tom shouted, gripping the steering wheel, as if it could anchor us to sanity. Through the rearview mirror, I saw shapes materialize in the fog-omen-like, but wrong. Their limbs were too long, their faces devoid of features. They pressed against the car, leaving greasy smears on the windows, their whispers now clear words filled with rage and sorrow. "Leave this place." We screamed, huddling together, but there was nowhere to go. The car was our only protection, flimsy as it felt. I closed my eyes, praying for this nightmare to end, but the voices only grew louder, more insistent. Then, as suddenly as it began, the shaking stopped. The whispers faded, replaced by the deafening silence of the forest. We sat there, too terrified to move, too afraid to speak. Is it over?" Sarah finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Tom replied, his grip on the steering wheel loosening. We waited, every minute stretching into eternity. Eventually, the first light of dawn pierced through the fog, revealing a scene that was both surreal and horrifying. The car was covered in the strange symbols, smeared in what looked like ash. The forest around us was silent, but we knew it was far from empty. "We need to go," I said, my voice firm despite my fear. Now, with the first rays of sunlight as our guide, we abandoned the car and started walking, the forest still hauntingly quiet. As we made our way back to civilization, the events of that night played over and over in my mind. We had survived, but something in those woods had marked us. And I knew, deep down, that we had not seen the last of the forest phantoms. The Arizona desert stretched out before us, an endless expanse of sand and scrub under a blistering sun. Jason and I were on the ultimate road trip, eager to escape the monotony of our lives. But now, with our car broken down in the middle of nowhere, the thrill of adventure had turned into a creeping dread. "Damn it," Jason cursed, kicking the car tire. The old sedan had overheated, the engine refusing to turn over no matter how many times he tried. "I told you we should have gotten this thing checked before we left." I didn't have the energy to argue. The heat was oppressive, each breath feeling like it was searing my lungs. We had only a couple of bottles of water and no cell service. The nearest town was miles away, and the desolate highway offered no promise of passing cars. "Let's just stay calm," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We'll wait for the temperature to drop and figure something out." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the desert transformed. The searing heat gave way to a bone-chilling cold, and the silence was almost deafening. We huddled in the car, trying to conserve warmth and water, our breaths visible in the freezing air. Hours passed in a tense silence. The vastness of the desert felt like it was pressing down on us, an almost physical weight of isolation. I peered out the window, hoping for headlights, but saw only the unbroken darkness. "Do you hear that?" Jason asked suddenly, his voice low. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard it too, a distant, unearthly howl. It started as a low moan, rising and falling like a spectral wail. My blood ran cold. "What is that?" I whispered, my eyes wide with fear. Jason shook his head, his face pale in the dim light. "I don't know, but it's getting closer." We sat in terrified silence, listening to the howls grow louder, more insistent. They seemed to echo from all directions, surrounding us in a spectral symphony. My heart pounded in my chest, a wild, frantic beat. "We can't stay here," Jason said, his voice shaken. "We need to find help." "But it's the middle of the night," I protested. "We don't know what's out there." Jason grabbed the flashlight from the glove compartment, his expression grim. "Wipers out there. It can't be worse than staying here." Reluctantly, I followed him out of the car. The desert was an endless sea of shadows, the moon casting an eerie glow over the landscape. We started walking, the howls still echoing around us, a constant reminder that we were not alone. After what felt like hours, we saw a faint light in the distance. Hope flared in my chest, and we quickened our pace, desperate for any sign of civilization. But as we drew closer, the light revealed itself to be a solitary lantern hanging from the porch of a rundown shack. "This must be some kind of joke," I muttered, but Jason was already heading for the door. He knocked, and the door creaked open to reveal an old man with hollow eyes and a gaunt face. He looked like he hadn't seen another human in years. "What do you want?" he rasped, his voice like dry leaves. "Our car broke down," Jason explained. "We need help." The old man studied us for a long moment before nodding. "Come in, but be warned, the desert holds many secrets." Inside, the shack was filled with strange trinkets and ancient maps. The old man offered us water and motioned for us to sit. "You heard the howls, didn't you?" he asked, his eyes glinting with a strange light. We nodded, and he sighed. "Those are the spirits of the desert. Lost souls, cursed to wander forever. They're drawn to the living, desperate for release. A chill ran down my spine. Is there any way to stop them? The old man shook his head. No, but you can survive the night. Stay inside. Don't make a sound. They'll pass by, come dawn. We spent the night huddled together, the old man's warning in our minds. The howls grew louder, more frenzied, as if the spirits knew we were near. But we stayed silent, praying for the first light of dawn. When the sun finally rose, the howls faded, leaving an eerie silence in their wake. We thanked the old man and left, finding a passing car that took us to the nearest town. But even now, the memory of those howls haunts me. The desert holds many secrets, and some things are better left undisturbed. Our road trip was supposed to be an adventure, a chance to reconnect after years of drifting apart. 5 friends, 1 car, and endless miles of highway ahead. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. We'd been driving for hours when the needle on the fuel gauge started to dip dangerously close to empty. "We need gas," Jake said, squinting at the darkening horizon. "There's a station up ahead," Sarah replied, pointing to a flickering neon sign in the distance. The gas station appeared like a relic from another time, its rusted pumps and broken windows testaments to years of neglect. "This place looks creepy," Emily muttered as we pulled in. The car coughed once and died, as if sensing our collective unease. Jake and I stepped out, the crunch of gravel underfoot loud in the oppressive silence. "Hello," Jake called, but his voice echoed back, unanswered. The station was deserted. We shared a glance, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "We should just fill up and leave," I said. Jake nodded, but the pump was useless, the nounsel broken off. "Great," he muttered. "There's gotta be a phone inside." We made our way to the station's entrance, pushing open the creaky door. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. Shelves stood half empty, their contents long expired. A single light flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows. "Over here," Jake said, pointing to an old rotary phone on the counter. He lifted the receiver and frowned. "Dead." Emily and Sarah joined us, their faces pale. "I don't like this," Sarah whispered. "Let's get back to the car." We hurried outside, but the car wouldn't start. "What now?" Emily asked, panic creeping into her voice. "We can't stay here." A sudden noise made us all jump. It came from the small garage attached to the station. "Maybe there's someone in there," Jake suggested, his voice lacking conviction. We approached cautiously, the hair on my neck standing on end. The garage was dimly lit, tools scattered across workbenches. At first glance, it seemed empty, but then I saw a figure huddled in the corner, back turned to us. "Excuse me," I called out. The figure didn't move. "Hey," Jake shouted, stepping closer. The figure's head snapped around, revealing a gaunt, haunted face. "Get out," the man rasped, eyes wild. "You shouldn't be here." "Who are you?" Jake demanded. The man ignored the question, his gaze darting around the room. "They'll come for you," he whispered. "They always do." "Who?" I asked, but the man just shook his head, mumbling incoherently. "We need help," I insisted. "Our car broke down." "Help?" The man laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "There's no help here, only them." Before we could ask more, a loud bang echoed through the station. The man's eyes widened in terror. "They re-here," he screamed, scrabbling to his feet and disappearing to our side door. Panic surged through us. "We need to leave now," Sarah urged. We bolted for the exit, but the sound of footsteps stopped us cold. Shadows moved outside the windows, dark shapes, shifting in the dying light. "What do we do?" Emily whimpered. "Hide," I whispered. "Find somewhere to hide." We scattered, each finding a separate hiding place among the cluttered shelves and dusty corners. My heart pounded in my chest as the footsteps grew louder. Through a crack in the door, I saw them, figures draped in shadow, faces obscured by darkness. They moved silently, methodically, as if searching for something. One of them paused near my hiding spot, head cocked, as if listening. I held my breath, praying I wouldn't be discovered. The figure moved on, and I let out a silent sigh of relief. Minutes felt like hours, but eventually, the figures left. The silence that followed was suffocating. I crawled out of my hiding place, heart still racing. "Guys," I called softly. One by one, they emerged, faces pale and eyes wide with fear. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, voice trembling. "But how?" I asked. "The car's dead." "The garage," Sarah suggested. "Maybe there's something we can use to fix it." With no better option, we crept back to the garage. The man was gone, but his words echoed in my mind. They always come. We found a toolbox and worked quickly, adrenaline fueling our efforts. Just as we were finishing, the sound of footsteps returned. "Closer this time. Hurry," Emily urged. We raced back to the car, praying it would start. Jake turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Relief washed over us as we sped away from the cursed station, the figures receding into the darkness behind us. We didn't stop until we reached the next town, collapsing in exhaustion at a small diner. As we recounted our ordeal, a waitress overheard and approached. "You're lucky to be alive," she said. "That station has been abandoned for years. People who go there don't usually come back." Her words sent a final shiver down my spine. We'd escape with our lives, but the memory of that night and the haunting figures would stay with us forever.